everybody. I'm Alisa Meredith from Tailwind, and I am joined today by
Kate
Kate All of Simple Pin Media. And it's always fun to talk to Kate because we always have these new things we've found or questions that have come up. But today we're going to talk about something that has kind of been on your mind lately, Kate, and I'm just gonna pull it all out.
Yeah.
You ready?
Yes, I'm ready. Let's go.
Okay. So we're going to talk about influencer marketing on Pinterest. And I got to be honest with you, this has been way off my radar. So I'm looking to you for a lot of these answers. And I know you're ready.
Oh, somebody says they can't hear us, but I don't know why that is, but we will see.
Is there anyone else who cannot hear? Because we can hear each other. Okay, somebody else, if you could comment, let me know. You might try refreshing your screen to see if that works.
Yes.
Yeah, sometimes that happens. So we're going to talk about influencer.
Oh, perfect.
Okay. People can hear. Okay, so if you could, Cortana, if you could refresh your screen, that may work. Because thank you, everybody. I appreciate you telling me that you can hear. Helpful. Yeah. Okay, so what we're talking about today is influencer marketing on Pinterest. I mean, when I think about influencer marketing, my mind instantly goes to Instagram. Mm-hmm. So then the question is, can influencer marketing work on Pinterest?
Okay, so Alisa sent me some questions ahead of time, and I feel like this topic of influencer marketing has really changed over the years on Pinterest. I feel like it has it's just changed, especially as Pinterest has changed. So I definitely think that an influencer, like you can do influencer marketing on Pinterest, but their audience really needs to match the goals. Like you have to have a really good understanding of why you're doing it instead of just going for anybody, just to say, I want just somebody to just promote my products on Pinterest or promote my content. It really has to be a targeted plan because it works so differently. I think you need to have a targeted plan with Instagram and Facebook too. But I just think Pinterest is so different and you really need to understand each person's audience on Pinterest to really make it work. So long answer was what I just gave. Short answer is yes. Influencer marketing can work on Pinterest.
Okay, so you kind of addressed the brand concerns, but let's talk about if, let's say I am an influencer, I want to be an influencer on Pinterest. Can that work for me?
Yeah, I can think it would definitely work for you. I would say a few things that you need to consider is one, if you're a blogger or a content creator who's already working with brands, what you can do is simply add in Pinterest influencer type of package or strategy to what you pitch back. So for those who don't understand how that works, usually what happens is a brand will contact a blogger to say, I would like you to do this campaign featuring our butter. And we're going to give you this cost. We want you to do this much in your post. Well, then what you can do as a person is you can pitch back and say, hey, I'd love to do it. Why don't we add another layer of getting so many of these pins from this post onto Pinterest and add in the cost. So, and I'll go into a little bit more of that in a little bit, but I think that is probably the first way if you're already doing it. If you're not already doing like brand work or working with brands, my first suggestion would be to start to explore that type of sponsored work and see if it matches. You know, a lot of people hear this sponsored work idea and they're like, oh yeah, it's just another revenue generator. But you really have to be specific about how it matches up with your brand. You know, I get tons of pitches all the time from companies and they just don't fit with Simple Pin. So it doesn't make sense for me to do it just for a paycheck. So be really, really smart about who you're going to choose.
Okay. All right. So let's get back into some more basics because I think that there are a lot of questions about it because you don't hear much about influencer marketing on Pinterest. So why don't we? Is it happening?
I think it's happening. I think it's definitely happening. I think we don't hear about it a lot because brands want instant gratification. And Pinterest, for those of us who have marketed over there for any length of time, we know that it takes a little while to get the train moving. And so if a brand is really interested in instant impressions, instant clicks, or instant exposure, Pinterest is not the first place you think of. You think of Instagram and Facebook. And so I think that brands don't really understand how to use Pinterest to get more exposure over the long haul. So their campaigns are very, they look at quarters. So what are we going to get in this quarter? What are we going to get in this quarter? But if I was a person who is creating content for a brand, I would say, hey, let's work together to think about how we're going to create something now. So then maybe even by Easter or Memorial Day, we could really get things going. Like think more out. But again, I think the reason it's just not talked about a lot is because a lot of people don't know how to do it. It doesn't, and brands don't, they want it now, basically.
They do.
So
okay.
That's a hard sell.
To know. Yeah. Yeah, I know it's true. Okay. Who are the Pinterest influencers though? I mean, when we think about Instagram influencers, we think, well, I think anyway about like beauty bloggers, maybe celebrities. So what's the difference between a Pinterest influencer and an Instagram influencer?
I would say that's still being defined a little bit. I would say first and foremost, somebody would say right away, it's for somebody who has a lot of followers. Mm-hmm. And Pinterest used to have a chronological feed. And so this would make sense with somebody who has a sheer amount of followers by volume. Their pins that they shared would get seen by a lot of people. But now that we've gone to the smart feed that's based on keywords and images and domain authority, then we have more of a difficult time just going, okay, Alisa, I'm going to have you be an influencer because you have 1 million followers. But Kate, you can't be an influencer because you only have 10,000. I think now you have to go a little bit deeper to look at site traffic. You have to look at how engaged their audience is. And if the person knows their target audience, if they're like, I know my Pinterest user likes XYZ, I know they click on this, I know they share this. I think that makes you an influencer if you have that knowledge and you can communicate that to a brand. Because a brand's going to want to know, I think I'd written this in my answer somewhere, but I think you really have to know who your audience is. If you're a vegan blogger and a butter company comes to you, I don't care how many followers you have, you're not a good match, right? But if you sell vegan butter and you're a vegan blogger and you have a vegan influence on Pinterest, that is a match regardless of the number of followers you have.
Okay. Do you think that's something that's hard to communicate to brands when they're looking for influencers? Like look beyond followers?
Yeah. For the last year and a half, I've been doing a lot of market research on what brands want to know about Pinterest. And one of the biggest things that I hear from all these people is brands don't really understand it. And so you need to kind of educate them and teach them more about it and how it works best. And so I think it just goes back to them wanting a quick fix. And Pinterest is not the place you go for a quick fix.
No, never. Mm-hmm. Okay. So my next question was about how to become a Pinterest influencer. And actually Mona asked it really well. Can you talk about Pinterest followers versus page views? She has, I think that's 1,700 followers, but she gets 1 million page views a month. Can I leverage that to work with brands? And we were just talking about this, so I'm glad she asked.
Yeah. So, Mona, I would say number one, yes, you could do it. Make sure that your page views are being pulled from Google Analytics. A lot of times Pinterest will give you monthly views. Those are not page views. Those are just views of your pins. And so you want to be really careful as to where you're pulling that information from. I know we have a lot of people that we work with, and hitting that million threshold is really tough. So that's why I would say really try to distinguish between where you're pulling those numbers from Pinterest Analytics or Google Analytics. Giving the brand that data is really good, but for your sake, you want to look back at Google Analytics to see if we're talking about clicks through to your site. That's where we're really going to find it is there. So you can definitely leverage it for sure, but I would say go a step further to say, who are your people? Who's your target audience member? What do you know that they're going to buy? And sometimes that requires that you do a survey on your site, or you just spend about an hour in your Pinterest Analytics looking at what they're clicking on, what boards they're saving to really get a good understanding of them.
That's a great point. Yeah. So it's easier to see those large numbers in the Pinterest Analytics where it says views daily. Yeah, that
They're
gets to
so
be a
fun.
huge number.
I
Yeah,
like
they
those
are
numbers.
fun. I do
Like,
too.
I would like to keep
Unfortunately,
those numbers. I wish it was
yeah,
the case.
I
Yeah,
wish that meant something more, but
I know. And what we have found too over the years in working with so many accounts, which we just hit 100, which is
wow,
amazing.
congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
We have seen that follower number really does not translate to clicks. And that has been so amazing for me to see with somebody who has like 3.5 million followers can get the same amount of clicks as somebody with 100,000 followers. So it's very interesting to see that disparity.
Yeah, yeah, excellent. So if let's assume that Mona has 1 million clicks from Pinterest to her site every month, right? How would she take that step from blogging about her own stuff and maybe blogging for fun or blogging to get clicks on ads on her site? How does she take that step from there to a relationship with a brand?
So I would say there's a kind of a few things. Like one, I would say decide what your value add is. Like, what do you bring to the table that a brand's going to find so appealing? What do you feel like you can sell to them, number one? And so when you pitch them, you have to have that ready. And then you can either say that you would like to create a post for them. And if you do create a post on your site for them that maybe features a picture of their product, make sure that you have a pinnable image and it's not just a product shot, but it really is subtle. It makes sense. It's almost as if the thing that you're creating, whether it's a recipe or DIY or whatever it is, or showcasing fashion, is that's like front and center, and the brand product's in the background. So like it's the subtle piece.
So it's
And
a
then
lifestyle image instead of
style image. Because a lot of people will just be like, here's deodorant, right? Like, don't tell me a great story. Like all the people I see doing really good sponsored content, I'm like, that post was about deodorant. Like, that's amazing. Like they just wrote this incredible story and took pictures. And one of our clients, Chelsea Day from Someday I'll Learn, she's so good at this. Like I'll be reading this intense post about like coffee and it's sponsored by Starbucks. And I'm like, what? I didn't even realize that. And so I think that is key right there. And then going to the brand and say, I have this strong Pinterest presence. I would like to add 20 pins out there as a part of this campaign to really see how we can get some traction on it and clicks back to your site. So it not only benefits the brand, but I mean, you get more clicks back to your website if done well, right? So I would say that is kind of path, that you can go right there. You could approach the brand cold and say, I just want to pin your stuff. But I actually don't think that works very well, especially if it's product based. Like I'll just pin pictures of your deodorant. Like nobody's really going to convert to a sale if they see the image on Pinterest of like Degree deodorant. It's just, it's not going to work.
So. No, it's not. No, it's not. Okay. So I just snagged an example from Someday I'll Learn and threw it up there in the link so you can check it out. Pretty cool. Okay. So I imagine Pinterest must have some rules for these kinds of things. So
they do. They do.
Okay.
And I will say this, in building our Amplify network, which we'll talk about at the end, I have combed through these. We have talked with lawyers. We have had lawyers interpret what they're having to say. And there is a very firm, there's wording, but there's a little bit of gray area, right? So I'm going to say, so Pinterest actually says, a business can't pay people for each board they follow or pin they save. Okay. It's okay for a business to pay a guest blogger to curate a board through their brand or through pay-per-click payment structures, like an affiliate link kind of structure. But they can't pay large groups of people to save a specific pin to artificially inflate the popularity of their content. So what that means is Coke can't come to a group of 150 food bloggers and say, pin this pin for us to every single board and we'll pay you. But what Coke could do is they could work with bloggers in a sponsored campaign, and they could go to those bloggers and put in their contract or their pitch, however they work it out, to say, please share this on your Pinterest profile a certain amount of times. So it's not like they're just saying, just pin this specific pin all around to these groups of people, but it's included in the contract. It's a brand and how they're working together to pin these pins. So it's a little bit different. And yeah, that Rachel, there is on Pinterest terms of service, and yeah, there is a whole list, but just know like it's the acceptable use policy. You really have to make sure that it's not blatantly like pin this 100 times a day, the same pin. It has to be part of a greater picture, part of a campaign. And I know for us, we've really had to make sure that we're operating within Pinterest terms of service, and that pinning on behalf of a brand or really curating for a brand is really the heart of what you're doing. But when you get to the point of just throwing up as many pins as possible, then you're on the line. Then it won't work either. I think that's another thing that Pinterest is trying to say to us, is that this is just not going to work. So do it a different way. So do it very
5 cents a pin to 10,000 people. Yeah. Not going to be effective. Okay.
Yeah. I think the other thing to go into that I think is incredibly important when you're doing any type of sponsored work or any type of ad campaign is you have to comply with the FTC. And the FTC requires you to label that this is an ad, this is sponsored. You can't put affiliate. A lot of common people outside of marketing don't understand affiliate. So you have to be very clear and upfront. And they are very strict on this. Like there's no wiggle room. They don't want you to confuse the reader. They need the reader to know that it's an ad. So always disclose on your website. There's disclosure statements you can Google to get for your site. But if you're going to do any type of influencer work, be honest about it, that you are, working on behalf of the brand.
I think that there may be 2 different ways that this is going to work here. So if you had a pin that was an affiliate link directly to a product, that pin would have to have a disclosure right in the pin description, right? So it would have to say ad or sponsored in the pin.
It can be a small disclosure. It doesn't have to be the full sentence.
All right. But if it's a pin to your website where that sponsored content lives, do you still have to put the disclosure on the pin, or is it okay to link that pin to your website that has the full disclosure?
It's okay to link that pin to your website as long as there is a full, clear disclosure at the top of your post.
Right.
This is sponsored, before they get to the bottom and it's this tiny minuscule writing that they can't see.
Right. Yeah. And something we found too is that it may not be enough just to say some of these links are affiliate links, because like you said, people don't understand what that means. So you need to define it and say some of the links in this post may be affiliate links, which means that I may make a small commission if you purchase from these links.
Yes.
And I know some people feel like, oh, it's not going to convert as well, but people appreciate honesty, and also it's the law. So we have to do it. It
is the law. And I sent this link to you earlier, but I did a podcast with my lawyer, Danielle Liss, and we went through Pinterest legal issues. We talk a lot about this, and we get into some copywriting stuff, but it's definitely always be on the up and up. That will always win. Just comply. That's kind of the best way to say it. Just do it.
I mean, the chances of you getting caught as a small influencer are small, but why?
Yeah. Why take the risk? Yeah. Yes. Yeah. And I think, I know there are some influencer campaigns out there that do, if you pin for their company, their pins, you get paid on a cost per click basis. So for every 1,000 clicks, you get a certain amount of money. That is okay. And we dug into that as well and asked them, does this fall into lines of Pinterest terms of service? And it does. So it gets.
But then that pin would have to have the ad disclosure on it, because it's the act of clicking the pin that triggers the payment.
Yes. I don't know if they are, but
they should be.
Should be. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Mm-hmm. So I know it is all kind of muddy waters, but if you just create, and the thing is, it's actually mostly in the brand's court to make sure you're complying with this. So if you're entering into a relationship with the brand, find out what their guidelines are, and they're really the ones who are more on the hook for this than the bloggers are. But still, you need to do the best that you can as well.
Yeah. What's interesting though is you find more the blogger content creator is the one that suffers, right? Instead of the brand, which is
even
frustrating.
though it's technically their responsibility. So, say I'm a brand and I've hired you to do this campaign for me. How would I know if it's working?
Okay. This is a tough one.
It is a tough one, but you can do it.
Yeah. Okay. So again, I kid you not, like we've been spending literally, it's been a year and a half where we've been asking a lot of these questions about how do you track this? What does a brand want to know? And over, everybody that I interviewed, lawyers, people who work with brands, had said, brands want to know about impressions and they want to know about this particular thing being seen. Whereas I kept saying, like, don't they want to know clicks? Don't they want to know these things?
Right.
And what I found is that most of them didn't. They appreciated it, but they're really more interested in just the scene, which is why Instagram influencers are so great, because they can get impressions super fast. They can get interactions with the hashtag, and they can do something in 24 hours, 48 hours, and they got, boom, it's there, right?
Right.
Whereas with Pinterest, what we're working with is now the smart feed, and the smart feed has a weird delay. So say I follow Alisa and Alisa pins something. If I have never searched that term or I haven't engaged with Alisa's pins, I don't know if I'll see it for a couple of days, a week, maybe even 2 weeks. Or maybe if I put in Tailwind tribes and I haven't searched that, now all of a sudden I see it, but Alisa pinned it 2 months ago. So you have this really interesting time frame that you're working with. And so again, it's important to go back to brands to say, here's what we're working with. And so I can give you a report of impressions, maybe 30, 60, or 90 days. Here's the second layer that makes it tough, is that it's hard to pull that data from Pinterest on a new pin. It's really hard to find it in the Pinterest analytics, because analytics seems to be this place where it compiles the best of all time. And so you do have a couple other options. UTM codes, which are one of Elisa's favorites, and I tend to run for the hills.
You do, but they're your friends.
I do. Every time I'm like, Alisa, I need a UTM code. How do you do it? She's like, it's so easy. It's so easy. You can definitely add that. And I know that it's easy, and it's something we'll have to definitely get good at doing, because I want to see clicks. Like, that's a really important thing for me to see. But again, the pickle is the brand doesn't so much care about the click. They want the impression, and a UTM code doesn't track impressions, correct? Like, they can't track impressions on Pinterest.
Right.
So then the other option is you run that pin through Tailwind, and you especially run it through a Tailwind tribe. So for us, and how we set up our Amplify campaigns is we set up a tribe for a specific campaign, and we run all the pins through there, because then we can get the repin, we can get the reach, we can get the shares, like we can get more information, as opposed to if we're just pinning it on Pinterest with a UTM code. So it's kind of a multi-layered process, and you have to set your reporting at 30, 60, 90. If a brand wants reporting for that pin any sooner, it's not really good data to say, tell me what happened to this pin 7 days ago.
Would you want to ask them if they've ever done influencer marketing campaigns before? Like, if you're an influencer and you're going to a brand, would you say, have you done them before? What did you see for results?
Yeah, I think that would be a really, really good idea, is to go to them to see what's worked and see what hasn't worked. I think those are two.
Excuse me.
No, you're fine. I think those are going to be really good ones. It's going to people and gathering data. And you can do a promoted pin for like a super low cost. That could be another way to gather information if you want it quicker. You would have to do it the day you pinned, the day you started. But I don't know. Again, do you know if it's going to give me all the data, or? Is it just going to give me like what happened?
Well, when you start talking about conversions, that's when it starts getting trickier. But if you're just looking for impressions and clicks,
that might be good.
That comes in with about 24 hours. So that should
that might be a good route to go.
Right.
What's
so
that?
In your dashboard, you can switch to the hourly view, so you could see right away like how it was going. Which might be,
but then again,
handy.
You need to build into the cost of your campaign.
Yeah.
Pushing that back to the brand to say, if you really are hard pressed for getting this data within the next 24 hours, you're going to have to pay for a campaign. Now, you don't have to pay for a ton of, it doesn't have to be a ton, but at least $5 a day just to start getting information on it.
And even then, 24 hours, they're not going to have all the, all the information, because it takes a few hours to get approved. Yeah, don't go that short, because it's just totally different from Instagram. And I want to say, I know we're getting some great questions in, but I want to kind of follow the flow, and then we will definitely get to all those questions. But as far as like with Instagram, you could do just a sponsored post, and I believe it's pretty common to say we'll leave it up for a period of 2 weeks and then you delete it. So when you're doing something on Pinterest, is that the same kind of deal, or do you need to leave it up forever, or how does that work?
So I would first look at what's the advantage to me. So if there's an advantage that this pin brings traffic back to your site, there's no reason I would delete it, especially if you've done a really, really good job at curating the content and like crafting this beautifully crafted post. Then I would never delete it. Why in the world? It comes back to my site, right?
Right.
Now, if they asked you to also, in addition, pin a pin from their site that was their deodorant, then I might delete it because it doesn't go to my site and I don't want a picture of deodorant. And probably I wouldn't really work with them and say that's okay anyway, because it just doesn't work. Right?
Yeah. Yeah. But if that was just part of the campaign and you're like, okay, I know my part's going to work, I'll do the picture of the deodorant to get this working. But then when it's done, you can delete it. I mean, would you have to have that in writing probably?
You would have to have it in writing. They have to get a certain amount of time frame of how long they want you to keep that up. And if they don't, you need to ask. And if you are doing brand work, I would highly suggest you work with a lawyer, like 1,000%. They're lawyers. Danielle on the podcast, she specializes in specifically reading contracts for people to do sponsored work, because there are some things they can slip in there. And some people have had it where they've been asked to do a group board, or they've been asked to join a group board around a specific brand. And let's say it's called Yarn Making 2013. And you did this campaign in 2013, but in your contract, it said you can never delete that board. So now you're stuck with Yarn Making 2013 and you don't even talk about yarn anymore. You're stuck with a board.
Yeah. Okay. Good point. And that I put the link to that podcast in the messages as well, because that was an awesome episode. So definitely listen to that. So how much are people getting paid? I know that's kind of a loaded question.
Nobody talks about this.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. It's really, really hard to find, to be honest. I think it would have been easier pre-Smart Feed. I know there were a lot of people getting paid per pin to specifically pin affiliate links when affiliate links were allowed on Pinterest. And that helped boost their income. But that's not Pinterest, in their changing of their acceptable use policy in 2016, I think wanted to pull away from that it wasn't this, you just pin a ton of stuff and I'll pay you to pin. So,
yeah. So let's just clarify that we can do affiliate links.
You can do affiliate.
Yeah, they came back, but the other rules surrounding that are different now.
Yeah. So I would say I think it's subjective to the person who is the influencer, and it's subjective to their rates, to the brand and what they're willing to pay. I think anywhere between, if we're doing a per pin, $10 to $30 to $50 a pin is probably, and I would say that's a rate that I would charge, because you also have to be thinking about the integrity of your profile. So my profile is important to me, and it communicates my brand, it communicates my vision. And so even if a brand came to me and said, I want you to do this sponsored post and I'm going to pay you $3,000, but it's talking about like, I don't know. I don't even know what it wouldn't relate, like water bottles. Like, sure, I could probably spin it really well to sell water bottles to my audience on my podcast or something, but it's not worth it to me.
Yeah.
The extra work and headache to figure it out, it's not worth it to me. So,
so take note, Kate is not selling her soul for $30 in pins.
I am not my soul. Okay. So that being said, the one thing that you can do is think about the time it will take to have you run this extra part of the campaign. Now, if you are somebody who does not know your hourly rate for what your time is worth, I would highly suggest you do that first. Then think about how long it's going to take you to pin these extra pins. And that's your hourly rate. And that's what you charge. And for some people, their hourly rate is $500. For other people, their hourly rate is $100. So it's all back again to your hourly rate and what you're worth.
Yeah, and I think to add to that I think that's a really good place to start. And if that's where you're comfortable, that's good. But there's also the extra layer of the value that you're providing. So if you know that this is a really great match and you have the trust of your audience and they are going to act and this company is going to make a ton of money off this campaign, then that's where you bump it up.
Yeah.
Add in the value factor.
Another thing to do would be to think about products that you already love and follow them on Pinterest. Start pinning some of their stuff, maybe even start commenting, leave a message and say like, I'm not a spammer. I'm not crazy. I actually really like your product and I'd love to work with you. And so can we work together? Can you email me? And a lot of times they'll have companies who manage for them, but those companies read those emails. You know, like we get those sometimes for some of our clients, people asking to join, and some I'm like, yeah, absolutely. And others I'm like, no way.
Okay. So you just answered really well. How can I find a brand to work with? If I'm an influencer, do I need to go through an agency or are there other ways?
No, I would definitely, I know that most brands have PR companies that they work with. So you're probably going to have to work with an agency, but I would start by asking around. If you have a group of people that you are in a Facebook group with, I would ask them who's good to work with and who's not to work with. Because in all my research, I got a lot of feedback as to who to stay away from and who to engage with. And that I think gives you a lot of information when your colleagues trust a certain source. Ask them to introduce you via an email. Cold pitches are tough. They're really tough.
Going either way would be tough.
Yeah, exactly. Because you're doing this dance, like, I don't know if we're really going to work together well. I don't know if you're crazy, so you got to do a little bit of some vetting there, but I would say follow them, talk about their product. And I would say take a lesson from Instagram. And as I watched people who are influencers on Instagram and their stories, some of them will talk about certain products and they'll talk about how much they love them. I know they're not getting, and they'll say not sponsored, but I know that they're so smart, because if Maybelline or whatever ever came across their story, they would go, oh, you already love our product. You're a great match. So start to talk about those products, start to talk about what you love about it. And then if they decide to jump on the bandwagon and want to do a sponsored campaign with you, include Pinterest in that. But authenticity always wins.
Okay. So we've been talking about big brands. Is it only big brands who are working with these influencers, or are some of the smaller ones doing it as well?
I would say, well, I guess define smaller for me. Maybe give me an example.
Oh no. Okay, so big,
or just not an example, but
Maybelline or
Maybelline's like big. Would small be like more of a local type company?
Yeah, it could be local, or maybe a startup company. Maybe like what's that? Oh, there's a cosmetic company I like. It's small. It's called ColourPop with a U in the color.
Okay.
And they're not Maybelline size. So are companies like that maybe a lot of people haven't heard of? Are they getting involved with influencer marketing, or is it just the big ones?
I would say that they're probably following the lead of the big ones and they're just focusing on Facebook and Instagram because they don't understand Pinterest. So I think for those of us who are really good at Pinterest and really good at understanding our audience, you need to tell the brands in your current campaigns or future campaigns, I could kill it for you on Pinterest, and it's long tail traffic. That word right there is so important because it's like a Google traffic, right?
Yeah.
So that magic word is long tail traffic. And that's
okay. So the magic word for the day.
Yeah. Everybody who says it. That's your selling point. You can't say that with Instagram. You can't say that with Facebook. So I think you really have to sell them on that longevity piece. And then a thing that we're really looking at is brands that have older content, older seasonal content that maybe they still work with these influencers, and we can say, hey, last Christmas, this campaign that you did with said person did so well. We actually want to take that. We want to amplify it in our network because then you'll get more play off of it because it's already been on Pinterest for a full year. It's getting some great traffic. So let's continue to give it great traffic because we know on our posts that they can live for our pins. They can live for like a year and a half and then
or more. Yeah.
Or more. Yeah. And then some others who've been in the background, they start gaining steam. So there's a lot of things I think that brands don't understand about Pinterest traffic.
Okay. So we can help with that. So let's look at some of our questions.
I know. I've been seeing a lot of them come through. They're good.
I know. It's exciting. So Elmer wants to know, is 100 unique visitors from Pinterest a day enough?
Truthfully, I think you need a little bit more. I would say if you could probably sell it to a smaller brand that you know is a good match for you. And if you're really good at selling that and selling your value add and you want to include Pinterest in that, I think you could definitely do it. But you can't really go to Pinterest or go to somebody and say, I get 100 unique visitors each day, because they're going to compare you to somebody who gets 10,000 and go, well, my money is better well spent on 10,000.
Right. But then you might be able to do it for less money as you're building up your views. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. So Julie says, as a brand, she works with a ton of different influencers. In an exploding world of influencer marketing, good point, what are some tips and tricks to help make your content with influencers stand out amongst the rest of the noise?
That is really, really good.
Yeah.
I would say, well, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say it goes back to what works for organic is going to work for paid as well. So there are a lot of ugly pins out there and a lot of pins that don't utilize everything that Pinterest has told us to as far as search benefit goes. So learn the search factors that go into surfacing your pins and make them beautiful, useful, and inspiring. And I think that a lot of that noise isn't really doing that at this point. So what do you think, Kate?
Yeah, I think as a person who works with influencers to try to draw out good content, ask them what content is already working on Pinterest. And what you might find in maybe those top 5 pin links is something that already fits within what you're doing. And you could ask them to create a spinoff. Say, I really like what you did here. What do you think about collaborating on this type of post? And I know for a content creator, influencer, that's gold because they're trying to, some of them take on a vast amount of campaigns. And so they're trying to come up with these ideas and they're overwhelmed. So if you as a person who works with these influencers wants to draw out that really good content, give them ideas that serves their audience, not just your audience, but serves theirs. Because then that's when you get a win-win. That's when the magic happens because we're not swimming upstream with, the vegan butter example.
Yes, but you what you just said now and what you said earlier about content that's been around a while. So if you could even go a step further and find something that's been on someone's blog for a year and has a great traffic of shares and does really well on Pinterest, if you could use something that already exists and just have them work in your brand, that would do you better.
Definitely. Yeah. And a lot of times what's interesting that we find a lot about the Pinterest traffic that comes to our client sites is that sometimes they'll go, oh man, I created that post in like 5 minutes. I wish it would die. And so somebody came to them and said, I love this post that you created in 5 minutes. I think I have a great way we could monetize it. Would you be open to taking a few new pictures with the product and working it in? And now it's not only a win-win for you as a brand, but it's a win-win for them. And then they're not going to want that post to die, right? Because they're like, I had one woman tell me that she did like a mug cake. You can make cakes in like a mug in the microwave.
Yeah.
And she's like, I did it in 5 minutes. I took the picture on my front porch and it brings so much traffic to my site. And like if the brand approached her, with a cake mix.
Yeah.
Boom.
Yeah. Great. Very good. So I hope that was helpful. Okay. So Robin wants to know, hi, what is the type of description to use on each pin? Description of the actual picture or a longer description story of the post it's linking to? Thank you. Okay. You want to go first on this one?
I'll let you.
Okay. So I think what happens sometimes is people confuse the description on a pin with the alternate text on your website. So a lot of times, and I won't go too deep into it, but people use it to say what's in the picture. So it might be a mug on a coffee table. I don't recommend that, but that's like the old style of using alternate text. That is not what you put in a description. So you're onto it. It's going to be a longer description, a story of the post it's linking to exactly. So what challenge are you going to cover and solve for people? And how can you kind of get them excited and really wanting more? So kind of moving them to click instead of just saving too. So a little bit longer, definitely using keywords that people would use if they wanted to find your mug cake, and hashtags as well, which I know we have a question about.
Love me some hashtags.
Yeah. So do you have anything to add to that? Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I would say that's kind of the tension, when you talked about the alt text with the SEO and the Google, and somebody made a great comment to me the other day. They said, there's always this great debate to play to Google or Pinterest and what to put in there. And I think writing just a simple sentence, describing it with some keywords, I feel like is always sometimes a win-win.
Yeah,
and especially if they said, to answer that, you have to know like how much traffic do you get from Pinterest versus Google? Are you heavy Pinterest traffic? Or are you heavy Google traffic? You have to play a little bit to the game of the one who's bringing the most traffic to your site. So if you're like 80% Pinterest, you need to fill out the description so that it's really good for Pinterest with a dose of Google, right? Like, so I would say, what you said is correct. Always describing, being helpful, descriptive, calls to action. Those are sometimes tough, but I think they can be built in.
Yeah. So regardless of where most of your traffic comes from, your pin description is always going to be for Pinterest. Yeah.
Yes.
It's just the alt text might be different.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then, we were talking about FTC, and that, of course, is only in the US. I'm not familiar with Canada or the EU. I imagine they have something similar, but it's probably different wording and
very different. And a good example of that is Amazon. Amazon will allow affiliate links on Pinterest in the EU, and they have expressly written it into their terms of service. Okay. They have not written it into their terms of service in the US, but customer service people say it's okay. So there's a lot of different.
Another great debate.
Yep. So just look at the laws in your country and make sure you're abiding by them.
Yeah, you could look at sponsored post disclosure laws, and then your country name should pop it up. Okay, so Elizabeth wants to know, what exactly do you put on the pin example hashtag ad or hashtag affiliate? What about promoted by, and then your website or the website of your company you're pinning for, example, promoted by shop style. Okay.
So I think we have to dig in a little bit more to the FTC regulations, which we linked here a little while ago. You can't use affiliate, and FTC does say that. Common people don't understand what affiliate means. So ad is a good one to put in there. There are some other words that they say to add in. So I'm going to defer to that but you don't have to put promoted by. In fact, if you run a promoted pin on Pinterest, it says ad now, and it says promoted by. So, Pinterest will do that for you.
But But if we're talking about you promoting for somebody else, then you still have to.
You have to disclose it. It's just what the words are. We just need to go back to the FTC and look at that. And it changes. So you want to be up to speed on that as well. It's kind of just
do the best you can. I mean, if you put in promoted by Shop Style or sponsored by Shop Style. Sponsored by Shop Style would be acceptable, but it's a lot longer than putting in ad or sponsored.
It is a lot longer.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So again, look at that document, see what you
and you don't have to put it on the pin image, just in the pin description.
Right. Yep. Okay. So no. We didn't really talk about domain authority in this podcast. We mentioned it because it's a factor in Smart Feed, but it's not really to do with influencer marketing.
It's a future podcast topic, though.
Yeah,
I've got it in the works.
One on search. Awesome. Okay, so follow that Simple Pin podcast. Okay, Rachel, what would be a good length of time to pull metrics on a new pin? Also, how frequent should these metrics be monitored? Weekly, monthly, etc.
So Pinterest metrics are a little bit tougher. I would always look at them monthly. I would never look at them weekly. I would be banging my head against a wall.
Crazy,
yeah. Okay. You should always look at them monthly. In quarters too is really strong too. Looking at one quarter versus the previous quarter and looking at year over year. That's going to be another good one as well. A lot of people will say my traffic is down or my pin is losing steam. But we look back at the year ago and maybe your traffic is up 25%. Like you have to really take into consideration that if you're going to pull metrics on a new pin, I would say that's going to be at 30 days minimum. I wouldn't go any sooner than that.
Right. And when we're talking in the context of reporting to a brand, that's important that you set expectations way before you pin anything or agree to anything.
In your contract say, I will report at 30, 60, and 90 days, these three specific metrics, and that's it. I might go above and beyond, but I definitely want to set my level first. And then if I get to show them I'm awesome, I get to add more.
Cool. Okay. So question from Julie again. Hashtags on Pinterest are still fairly new feature. Yes. Do hashtags enhance the capability of certain pins being seen? Yes. Yes, they do. Can they be easily tracked? Not so much. So yes, the way it works now is that hashtag searches are going to pull the most recent pins with those hashtags. So if you do a hashtag search, you're going to see, okay, this pin was pinned 2 minutes ago, and then the next one was 10 minutes ago, and then a little bit down further, 2 days ago, 2 weeks ago. So yes, they absolutely will help your pin get found faster. And then when anyone shares your pin or repins, that pin, because it still has a hashtag in it, is also going to be surfaced in a hashtag search. So it won't necessarily help in the Smart Feed, but it will help in a hashtag search, or which I don't know how many people are doing, like going to search and typing hashtag Pinterest marketing.
I don't think they get it yet.
Not yet, but they are real prominent in the description. Like I've seen some that are when the news feed, if you do a hashtag search, they'll just be the rich pin information and then the hashtags bright blue. So when you click on those, you will notice that it's the recent hashtagged pins. But as far as easily tracked, I don't know of any way to like pull a report or anything. You can always just do that hashtag search. And I've also noticed
sorry. Go ahead.
Okay. I was going to say when you start typing a hashtag into a pin description on Pinterest, it does auto populate options for you. So it's like a hashtag finder, and it will tell you how many times it's been used. But in my observation, that how many times it has been used is not looking at really how many times it's been used. So if you're a brand and you're saying, okay, I want to see shop style hashtag used 500 times, that's not going to be an accurate metric. As far as I can tell. I could be wrong, but that's what I'm seeing.
And you wrote the article about hashtags on Tailwind, right?
I did.
That was really good. My team really likes it. It's been circulated twice in our group.
Oh, awesome. Cool. All right, I'll share that link then. Okay, is that the end of our questions? Oh, okay. Becoming an influencer. Ways to use Pinterest to drive traffic to your product's website as an influencer. Any more tips that Shannon can use?
So I would say I'm trying to figure out becoming an influencer and driving traffic to your product's website. So I'm confused, like, are you the person who needs influencers, or you want to be an influencer? Because I think if you have traffic to your product's website, so I would say if you have a product, you want to find influencers. But
Right.
so I don't know if there would be a lot of brands that would want to help you drive traffic to your products, if I'm understanding it correctly.
Right. I kind of took it as maybe two different questions. Like, could you speak about becoming an influencer? So we talked about that. Like, so start writing about products that you love in a really creative way and having great images.
Okay.
Yeah. And then kind of interacting with brands on social, even if it's, if it's on Facebook or Instagram, wherever, to kind of make yourself into an influencer. I think that's what it was about.
Yeah. And driving traffic to your website, I think, is just maintaining a strong, like, Pinterest marketing strategy yourself, and then being really smart about how you do your pin images to get the traffic back to your site. I would think that's like going to be that big win.
Okay, cool. And Bridget is digging the influencer topic. So thank you for coming by, Bridget. And let's see. Question. Ooh. How to use Tailwind. Okay, I can help you with that in a minute. Okay, good question about hashtags from Anne. I have some pins that do really well. Should I go back and add hashtags? No, because they're looking for the latest pins that have hashtags in them. So if you add hashtags to pins from a year ago, they're not going to show up. So just from now on, add them. And add them to your promoted pins too, because even though they don't show up in hashtag searches now, they probably will someday. And also, they'll help when people repin that pin. It will show up. And Anne also wants to know about rich pins. Lots of talk on rich pins lately. Do they still matter?
I have a lot of thoughts on this.
Do you?
I do. It's been like, if anyone, my email is actually all filled with this tomorrow because it's all my thoughts. But I would say they still matter. Pinterest hasn't said yet that they don't matter. Okay. And in all their documentation, a lot of people will say that turning rich pins off, your traffic will go up. Some people will say they turned rich pins off and their traffic went down.
Yeah.
So what I will tell anybody is, if your traffic is chugging along just fine, turning your rich pins off is not a way to game the system to get more. You don't know what effect it will have. And rich pins, still, I haven't quite seen a negative effect yet. I know that there was a little snafu a couple weeks ago with the make this being added. They've since reversed it. So I would say I'm still doing some processing on whether or not it's a good thing, or it's a thing to take off. And right now I'm landing on no, just leave it. It's
I'm going with the official word. Yeah, the official word is it helps engagement, so use them. And also we can see that in the smart feed, that's what's pulling up as the description. So even if that were to go away, and sometimes it does, I can't figure out why, but
I can't either.
It's still an extra signal, right? So having that rich pin data on your website that Pinterest is given permission to look at gives them another hint about what your article is about. So that should only help in search, but the official word is use them, builds engagement. So, whoa, this is a long one. Okay, Alex, I'm going to close it because you can't see it all there. An influencer widens their net by joining related group boards. This benefits both profile and collaborator by providing new avenues for pins to reach new audiences. Okay, gotcha there, right? So the influencer is joining group boards, so they have more reach. The challenge is specific niches can cascade to broader related niches to gain exposure, but lose their specific appeal in a larger, more general pool. Okay, I don't see a question. Okay, so I think there are just some observations which are worth looking at. And then the question, are there metrics that give clear indications to pin fewer times a day? Fewer than what?
Yeah.
So, pinning too much can get you in trouble. So yes.
Yes. So here's what I'm going to say. I have a great advantage, and it was by accident pretty much that Simple Pin grew as big as it is, right?
It's not
And
an
so
accident. You know what you're doing. Okay.
thank you. Well, anyway, so we have 100. And what's really interesting to see is that we pin between 10 and 30 times per day for a variety of clients. One who's 30 pins a day can have the same traffic as someone who's 10 pins per day. And in fact, we were talking as a team about that 10 pin per day type of, who is that really good for? And there is a certain type of person based on their content that is really good for, and a certain type of person that 30 is really good for. There's so many other factors that go into what type of traffic Pinterest will bring than just how many number of pins per day. So my greater question back to people is, how much content do you have? How much time do you have? What have you set your Tailwind schedule to? I do 10 pins per day for Simple Pin. I have probably maybe 100 pieces of content, if that. Not all 10 pins are my own, but it keeps me active on the platform. It's just something that works. I'm just going to say there is no clear cut 10, 20, 30, 50, 100. You just really have to go with what works for you. One of our clients does 10 pins per day most of the year. And then in November, December, January, she ups that to 20 because that's her highest traffic time, and her traffic just goes up tremendously. Part of that is because her content is so good that even when she goes back down to 10, it stays there. It's like it's this really interesting stair step. So you have to be paying attention to your people and who's engaging with your audience. But doing more pins is definitely not. It's not the thought of like, the more I do, the more traffic I get. So it doesn't. It did work that way. It does not work that way now.
And there appears to be a point at which pinning more doesn't really help. And I think Tailwind did that study that found at about 50 pins per day. If you do any more, it starts to reduce your exposure in the newsfeed. So it could actually hurt you to go over 50. And then at some point, you're going to get marked as a spammer. I'm not exactly sure what the magic number is for that.
Oh, I've heard somebody in my group did it. I think on accident. I think he did 50. I don't know if it was on accident. Let's just say he did 50 pins of the same 2 pins like 3 days in a row. And I think the way that in which you get a penalty, number one, is by users. So if users see that you're pinning multiple times, they could flag you as spam. I wouldn't want to risk that. So you just have to be smart about what you're pinning and where. And
Okay, so last user question is from Brittany. How do you maximize your Pinterest traffic using Tailwind as an influencer? So I would say it is a great tool to get your pins out at the optimal time. And while the smart feed is absolutely a factor, it remains that if you can get your pin out at the time when most of your followers are likely to be active, that's going to bring more engagement to the pin then, which sends a signal to Pinterest that, ooh, this is a good pin, I should show it more. So that's why timing still matters a bit. And that's why the Tailwind Smart Queue is helpful. So I would definitely do that. And then like Kate mentioned, using the analytics to show the activity on a certain pin will be helpful as far as your reporting goes.
Yeah. And I think tribes is an important part of that too, because it gives another layer of reporting. So if you share a specific pin that's like sponsored content within a tribe, you can show what that tribe has done, what the reach that has. And I think that is something, again, reach impressions that brands are really looking for.
That's something that I have done with tribes. I joined a tribe that was pretty active, and I only pinned content from one blog because I wanted to show the blog owner, look what tribes can do. So within a couple of weeks, I had, I don't remember how many shares, how many repins, but it was several million potential impressions with just pinning twice. Well, I think it was like 20 pins total from just that blog. So if you pick a tribe and only put in content from that one source, it's really easy to show. Here are the results, even just from that one tribe. And if you haven't checked out tribes yet, there's a link to the landing page with the video. But basically, it's a group of like-minded bloggers who get together and make this tribe inside of Tailwind, and they put their content in. They share other people's content out. It saves a ton of time on finding stuff to pin. It gets your pins out to a new audience. So that could absolutely be of great value to a brand.
Yeah.
So, all right. So this was super helpful to me because, you know, I hadn't really thought too much about influencer marketing on Pinterest, and you answered all my questions and more. So
awesome. I had fun.
Thank you to Kate. Thank you for everybody who came by. Thank you very much, Kim Vidge, for coming by. I know she does a lot of influencer work. So
yeah.
You can also look her up on Facebook. She's super helpful. So thank you again, everybody, for being here. And we'll be back next month to talk about something very exciting on Pinterest. Again, I'm Alisa Meredith from Tailwind. And this has been Kate All from Simple Pin Media. And we'll see you again soon. Bye-bye.